Hey, beauties and bees. Welcome back to another spooky skincare session with me. I've covered a lot of paranormal topics on this channel. Haunted locations, urban legends, cursed objects. And most of the time, I can, or I at least try to sit back and look at these things with a certain distance, as stories, as folklore, as things that happened to someone else, somewhere else. But this one, I'm not going to tell you what to believe. But I will tell you that by the time I finished researching the story, I had absolutely no desire to verify any of it firsthand. And after you hear it, I think you will know why. This is the story of 5 teenagers, one very old coin, and a ritual that should never have been performed in the first place. Without further ado, let's get right into the story. I try a lot of skincare brands because of my work, but I've become really picky because I've seen firsthand how much consistent, well-formulated skin care can actually change your skin without needing procedures or clinic visits. These days, I pay less attention to flashy marketing and more to who actually made the product and whether the formulation makes sense scientifically. And that's exactly why I wanted to introduce you guys to Dr. Read You All. So this brand was literally founded by doctors and pharmacists, people who actually understand ingredients on a deeper level than we do. Their whole philosophy is that it's not about which ingredients sound impressive. It's about how they're stabilized, combined, and formulated to actually work on skin. They focus on 3 categories: retinoids, PDRN, and ceramides. So I will walk you through the different steps that they have. Their Chapter 1 Advanced Retinome Serum uses next-generation HPR retinoids. Retinoids can be intimidating because bad formulations can actually be harsh or even damage your barrier. But this one prioritizes stability, so you still get the texture, tone, and renewal benefits without the irritation. Chapter 2 is the Advanced PDR and Rejuvenating Cream. PDRN is one of the biggest ingredients in Korean skincare right now for recovery and rejuvenation. This one has high-purity PDRN at 1,200 parts per million. And it gives you that healthy, nourished glow without feeling heavy. And they also have an extended version that's even more restorative when your skin feels tired or irritated. And next, Chapter 3, the Advanced LC Ceramide Barrier Cream. So barrier care has become a #1 priority for me after pregnancy and even traveling constantly. This one has long-chain ceramides to actually strengthen and protect your barrier, not just sit on top of it. I really love that these products are designed to work together as a system, not just random products in a lineup. So if you really care about ingredients and real skincare over hype, check out Dr. Rue All on Yes Style. And you can, of course, use my code BATB12 for 12% off. Happy shopping. Okay, today I'm going to talk about a Japanese game or something more like a ritual called Kokkuri-san. Have you ever heard of this game? This game is commonly known as something like a Ouija board. But it's not just a Japanese version of the Ouija board. There's something more to it, even though that's the easiest comparison to make. Kokkurism dates back to the late 1800s in Japan, when Western table-turning sciences arrived and blended with existing Shinto and folk beliefs about spirits. The name itself is written with 3 kanji characters: fox, badger, and dog. 3 animals that in Japanese folklore are known as shapeshifters and tricksters. Beings that deceive, beings that are drawn to human weakness. The ritual itself is deceptively simple. You take a sheet of paper and write out the hiragana or katakana syllary across it, along with the number 0 through 9 and the words yes, no, and a torii gate symbol in the corner. The traditional Shinto gate that marks the boundary between the ordinary world and the sacred one. In the context of Kokkuri-san, that torii is the door the spirit uses to enter and crucially to leave. 2 or more people place a finger on a coin at the center of the paper. Someone calls out the invitation. Please come to us. And then you wait. If the spirit arrives, the coin begins to move. You can ask it questions. It answers by sliding the coin to letters or to yes or no. Simple enough, but there are rules, and the rules aren't suggestions. You must never perform the ritual alone. You must never let go of the coin mid-ritual. When you want to end the session, you must formally ask the spirit to leave. And you must keep asking until the coin moves to the toy gate, the signal that it has departed. Only then can you lift your fingers. The paper must be torn up and buried afterward. And the coin must be spent, actually used in a real transaction within 24 hours, or the spirit is said to linger inside it. Break any of these rules and the stories all say the same thing. Something follows you home. In Japan, Kokkuri had a moment of peak popularity in the 1970s. so widespread among school children that it was eventually banned in many schools outright. Teachers confiscated papers. Parents panicked. There were reports of students entering trance-like states mid-ritual of mass hysteria in classrooms of children who refused to speak after performing it. Well, skeptics will tell you it's media motor effect, the same unconscious muscle movements that explain the Ouija board. Your brain knows what it wants the answer to be. Your hand moves the coin there without your conscious awareness. It's not a spirit. It's you. Maybe. But that explanation gets a little harder to hold on to when you hear what happened to these 5 boys. The story I am about to tell you is the story of a man named Kenji who lives in Japan. Kenji was in 9th grade when this happened, and to this day carries it as one of the most skin-crawlingly unforgettable memories of his life. It all started in that brief window just before high school. Everyone's placement had already been decided, and the 5 friends were riding high on that particular kind of freedom you only get right before you become an adult or almost an adult. But the tragedy began in exactly that carefree space. 5 friends, Kenji included, gathered for an all-night hangout at the home of one of them, a boy named Ryo. Ryo's house was unlike any of the others. His family had served as the kanaki, the head priest for the local shrine for generations. In Japan, that means you're the person closest to the gods. The house itself carried that weight. It was old, sprawling, and had an atmosphere that set it apart from any ordinary home. Doll, having grown up in the presence of the divine since childhood, was quieter and more serious than most kids his age. That night, though, the house felt as peaceful as ever. As the 5 friends settled in, they crowded together in the living room, watched horror movies, swapped ghost stories, and let the energy build. The later it got, the more wound up they became and the bolder. That's when one of them, a boy named Takeshi, brought something up. He started talking about his elementary school homeroom teacher, a teacher who apparently was terrified of a ritual called Kokkuri-san. The story went that the teacher had once mishandled the ritual and had something awful happen as a result. The friends were immediately curious. Should we try it? That one offhand comment was where everything started. It was just curiosity. The giddy post-horror movie kind where you feel just brave enough to do something you probably shouldn't. None of them had any idea what that impulse was about to set in motion. They began looking for a place to hold the ritual. Doing it in Dior's house felt wrong somehow, like it would be a desecration of something performing that kind of ritual in a home dedicated to the gods. So they decided to sneak into their school through the front gate. Around 10 o'clock at night, the 5 of them set out. Every light in the faculty offices was off. Only the dim, flickering emergency lights in the hallways were on. They moved through the empty schoolyard and between the silent buildings until they reached the central courtyard. The courtyard had a few lights, but somehow those only made the atmosphere feel more unsettling. They sat in a circle. They spread out a sheet of paper and filled it in from memory. Katakana characters, yes and no numbers. None of them had actually done this before. They were going off rumors and hearsay, doing their best impression of something they only half understood. Then they needed a coin for the ritual. Takeshi reached into his pocket and pulled one out. I grabbed a coin from Ryo's house. It wasn't an ordinary coin. It was dark, blackened with rust, somehow just wrong to look at. The moment Kenji saw it, there was an instinctive revulsion. Hey, don't touch that. Something feels off about it. But Teshi just laughed it off. Relax. It's more atmospheric this way. Takes much about where exactly he'd found it, just that he'd come across it somewhere in Yo's house. Nobody pushed further. But then the one person in that circle who had grown up in that house went very still. Seriously, let's not do this. Something feels wrong, and this wasn't someone being dramatic. This was the quietest, most grounded person in the group, the one who had spent his whole life surrounded by things that were real and sacred. And he was telling them to stop. But the other 4 were already too far gone with excitement to hear him. Come on, let's just do it. It's only once. All 5 fingers came to rest on the rusted coin. And right then, in a courtyard where there hadn't been so much as a breath of wind, a cold, creeping chill moved through the air. Not like the wind, more like a cold fog seeping in from somewhere. Every spine stiffened. The air went heavy. All 5 of them felt it at exactly the same moment. Then someone spoke the words to begin the ritual. Please come to us. The moment those words ended, all 5 fingers on that rusted coin began to tremble. A silence descended, thick and total. The same 5 friends who had been laughing and yelling just minutes before were now completely still, every eye fixed on that coin. No one could bring themselves to speak. It was as if they were all holding their breath, waiting for something to wake up beneath their hands. Then the coin began to move. At first, it was barely anything. A faint tremor you might have talked yourself out of. Maybe someone was pushing it. Maybe it was nothing. But the movement grew more and more deliberate until there was no question. The coin was moving on its own. Their fingers were barely touching it. Take spoke first, his voice unsteady. Kokkuri-san, who are you? The moment the question left his mouth, the coin shot across the paper. Their fingers could only follow. It wasn't any of them guiding it. The coin itself was being pulled by something, sliding across the sheet as if on rails. It stopped. Ma. 3 characters. The 5 of them looked at each other, and that's when something strange happened. Each of them had seen something different. Kenji was certain it read, Mama. Taki claimed it spelled out a phrase meaning it is finished. Another friend thought they'd misread some of the strokes and couldn't make it out at all. 5 people, same piece of paper, same coin, same moment, and not one of them saw the same thing. And that alone wasn't normal. Maya, it could have been a name. It could have been the name of a mountain. Said a certain way, it almost sounded like a curse word. It was nothing and everything at once. Just sitting there on the paper, cold sweat was already running down all 5 of their backs. That was when it hit them. This thing had actually worked. They had actually summoned something. Haruto, who had been one of the most enthusiastic about the whole thing from the start, looked completely white. Let's stop. I'm actually scared. Kindi agreed. So did the others. All 5 of them wanted it over. But they knew you don't just walk away from Kokkuri-san. Sending it back properly was the most important thing of all. Takeshi tried, his voice shaking. Kokkuri-san, please return now. The coin moved the instant he finished, but not where they expected. It slid slowly, deliberately to a single word on the paper. No. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. They'd asked it to leave and it had refused. This thing, whatever it was, didn't want to go back. It wanted to stay right here on this paper with these 5 people. Please, we're begging you. Please go back. The coin moved again. Same spot. No. No matter how many times they asked, the answer didn't change. The dread was becoming unbearable. They finally understood in a way that went all the way to the bone what a mistake they'd made. Dior's warning, something feels wrong, landed now with a weight it hadn't had before. Kenji tried one last thing. Then what would it take for you to go back? This time the coin didn't hesitate. If anything, it moved faster than it ever had before, racing across the paper so quickly that 5 pairs of fingers could barely keep up. It pointed to letters one by one. Hadida, their breath stopped, but the coin kept moving. Dice. 5 characters burned into the page. If Haruto dies, no one made a sound. One of the 5, the one who'd been most eager, the one who'd brought the coin, would have to die before Kokkuri-san would leave. That was the answer. Harut sat there, his fingers still on the coin, completely frozen. Kenji's eyes filled with tears. This wasn't someone cheating. No one was pushing that coin. 5 fingertips barely resting on its surface. None of them with any intention of moving it, which meant this was real. Whatever Kokwang was, it had actually answered. Haruto had gone the color of ash. If Haruto dies, Kokkuri-san will leave. No one could hear something like that and stay calm. Haruto wanted to lift his finger off the coin more than anything, but he couldn't make himself to do it. Once you call Kokkuri-san, you already know deep down without anyone having to tell you that walking away without finishing the ritual properly will only make things worse. The others were the same way. All 5 fingers were still on that coin. Every part of them wanted to run, but none of them could move. It was as if something had fastened their hands in place. Kenji spoke again, a voice trembling. Please, Kokkuri-san, is there no other way? The coin went still, a long pause, as if whatever was on the other end was genuinely considering the question. Then slowly, it started to move again. Slower than before, almost leisurely, like it was taking its time. It stopped on the same word, no. Kenji felt a wave of despair. What even was this thing? Why Haruto? What did this entity have to do with that rusted coin? The questions came and went, but no answers followed any of them. That was when finally spoke. He'd been silent the whole time. Pray. You have to pray. Genuinely, that's the only thing that will make it leave. Gio had grown up in a household that served the gods. He'd watched rituals his whole life. He knew, even if only in some inherited instinctive way, that a spirit called carelessly can't be sent away carelessly. One sincere apology, only real genuine pleading. The 5 of them listened to him. Kenji closed his eyes and began, Kurang, we were wrong. We called you out of nothing but curiosity, and we are truly sorry. Please release your anger and go back. One by one, the others joined in. 5 voices, genuinely apologetic, repeating the words over and over. Time lost meaning. They didn't know how long. They knelt there, saying the same things again and again as sincerely as they knew how. And then the coin moved slowly this time toward the edge of the paper, toward the small torii gate drawn in the corner. The symbol of Kokkuri-san's exit, the door through which it was supposed to leave. The coin slid to a stop directly on top of it. 5 people exhaled at once. It's gone. It actually left. Takashi said it barely above a whisper, but no one smiled. They just stared at that rusted coin sitting on the toy, hollow-eyed, too wrung out for relief to feel like anything. With shaking hands, they finished the ritual. There were rules that had to be followed. The paper had to be torn up and buried. The coin had to be used, actually spent within 24 hours. Break those rules and the curse of Kokkuri-san would follow you. Old rules handed down for a reason. That night, they only half followed them. They were too shattered to think straight. They managed to tear up the paper and bury the pieces in the dirt. But the coin, the rusted blackened coin, went into Haruto's pocket. They were too scared to just leave it lying around somewhere it didn't belong. Haruto decided he would bring it back to Dio's house, put it back where it came from, and that seemed like the safest thing. None of them had any idea what that decision would cost them. They walked back to Dio's house in total silence. No one looked up. No one looked back. Every single one of them felt with absolute certainty that something might be following them, and none of them could bear to find out if they were right. They made it back. They tried to go to sleep, tried to pretend the night had been ordinary. No one slept. The 5 of them found other things to talk about. Relationships, school, the future, anything that wasn't what had just happened. Somehow they made it to morning. But when morning came, what was waiting for them was only the beginning of the real terror. Morning light came, and the 5 of them gathered in the living room to eat the breakfast Gio's mother had prepared. They all looked exactly how they felt, exhausted, hollowed out, running on no sleep. But no one said a word about the night before. They sat around the table as if they were all quietly agreeing to pretend it had been a dream. Then footsteps on the stairs. Ryo's father, the head priest of the shrine, the man who was by all accounts composed and dignified. He was coming down to the first floor. He looked different. The moment he saw the 5 of them sitting there, he stopped dead. Something crossed his face. Something that looked like recognition, but not the good kind. Then he turned and moved quickly toward the bathroom. A few seconds later came the sound of violent retching. The 5 friends looked at each other confused. Is he sick or something? Takagi muttered, not really meaning much by it. And then Dol went very still. His face had gone pale. I think we're in serious trouble. Rule was the son of a shrine priest. When he said something like that, it wasn't just a feeling. Then Dio's mother came into the room. She cleared her throat and looked at all 5 of them. What did you do last night? Where is the coin? She asked it plainly. The 5 of them couldn't process what they were hearing. No one had told her anything. No one had said a single word about what had happened. How could she possibly know? Haruto slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out the rusted coin. It's here. The moment it appeared, the gas range in the kitchen made a sound. A sharp, violent crack somewhere between a flame catching and an electrical short. All 5 heads turned toward it instinctively. And then the bathroom door burst open and Jules's father came rushing out. Before any of them could react, he had grabbed Jule by the collar and struck him hard across the back of the neck. Dee staggered. The other 4 were too stunned to even scream. What have you done? The calm, dignified man that they knew was completely gone. What stood in his place was someone consumed by a mixture of rage and fear that went beyond anything they'd ever seen from an adult. All 5 of them dropped to their knees. We are sorry. We're so sorry. Dio's father took the rusted coin and closed his fist around it. Did you think this was a game? Nobody answered. They couldn't lift their heads. Then something seemed to occur to him and his voice shifted. This coin? Where did you find it? Haru answered, barely audible. In the ceiling. Ryo's father's face darkened further. Whatever that meant, only he knew. A coin hidden away in the ceiling of a shrine priest family home, sealed there by the sound of it for a reason. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he looked at all 5 of them. There's nothing you can do about this now. Just be careful. And from that day forward, things started happening. Haruto was first. On his way out of the house after handing over the coin, he fell down the front steps. He was taken to the hospital with serious injuries to his leg and had to go through 2 separate surgeries. The person Kokkuri had named, the person who had been told he would have to die. He was the first one hurt. Then Sauta and Teshi. Within days, both of them came down with fevers that wouldn't break. Nothing worked. They were bedridden for days, missing school, and Dio's father, when he heard, said they would need to undergo a cleansing ritual as soon as they were able. Kenji couldn't sleep. Night after night, the same 5 characters surfaced the moment he closed his eyes. If Haruto dies, and Mayama, that word with no clear meaning, that had somehow meant something different to every person in that circle. And the fact that nothing had happened to Kenji made him more agitated, more terrified. 5 students who had started something out of sheer curiosity. It was never just a game. Kenji always ends the story the same way, no matter who he's telling it to. He says he's not someone who has any particular spiritual sensitivity. He's never been someone who believes in ghosts. But what happened that night is something he cannot write off as imagination or coincidence or group psychology. He still doesn't understand how something that began with such a small, careless impulse led to consequences that real and that lasting. At the very end, Kenji always adds one request. If anyone hearing this story is thinking about trying Kokkuri-san or anything like it, please don't. Not because it's spooky, but because it isn't a game. Once you started wrong, there are things you cannot take back. Kenji has lived that. That's the appeal he makes, and it isn't casual. Kenji started telling the story almost immediately after it happened. Haruto was still in the hospital. Sauta and Takashi's fever still hadn't broken. Kenji and the 5th friend were lying awake every night in a fear that had no real shape to it. Kenji needed to say it out loud to someone, anyone, just to get through the days. Somewhere out there right now, someone might be calling Kokkuri-san with nothing but a flicker of curiosity and a coin. No one can say for certain what that flicker will bring back with it. Okay, that is the end of tonight's story. Thank you for listening and see you next time. Bye-bye.